Hello and welcome to Whitney in the Wild. I am your host, Whitney Mendoza, managing partner with Liger Partners, and today I'm joined by Allan DiNero. And Allan, I was telling you I'm going to pull a Brandon Smith because I would be remiss if I didn't get a shout out to Brandon because you are a friend of the Brandon Smith Show.
Absolutely, yep. Brandon's a great guy.
But I was saying I was going to pull a Brandon and read a little bit of your bio because you have so many awesome things going on. I don't want to miss anything. So you're currently managing partner and founder of New Century Partners.
That's correct.
But you're also speaker and author, which we're going to talk about your newly released book here in just a second. But you're also a past board member and C-level builder of teams and businesses. You've held leadership roles in HR, sales, marketing, general management, training, distribution, manufacturing, strategic planning, mergers and acquisitions, executive compensation, and administration. Allan, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah. So I'm glad you're here. Such a pertinent topic that we're going to talk about today. And we're going to talk, it's centered around hiring, but where I thought we could kick off the call is going on about taking a look at where we are because, we're all kind of talking about COVID and we're coming back from COVID and people are hiring and things like that. And the importance of that human capital, right? Like as businesses, we often focus on the money capital, but I would wager to say human capital is actually more important.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'll admit to being passionate about the subject, hence the book. But look, I would argue that there's virtually nothing that happens in a business, whether it's how you go to market, whether it's how you strategize, whether it's how you react to competition, that doesn't happen. Your culture, by the way, the culture you're either trying to build or maintain or change, that doesn't happen without people. And so I agree with you. It's by far, for me, the most important thing that a talent acquisition team can do in the course of a day. If they've got an interview, it's the most important thing they can do that day.
Yeah. So, and you, I didn't mention this in your bio, but you've worked for some really big names, like Haverty's you were with for almost 15 years, and they have thousands of employees. When you're hiring, one, I'd love to know what are the differences, or are there any? Maybe you're looking at the same fundamental things when you're hiring thousands of employees for a larger company versus maybe you're only hiring, 20 or 50 for a smaller company.
Right. That's a really good point. And my short answer would be there's no difference. And that answer is based on two things. Again, remember that whether you're a 10,000 employee, I spent time with Ted Turner and Turner Broadcasting. We were 10,000 employees at that time, all over the world. But the point is this, whether you're hiring one employee today or 10 or 20 today, think of it as brick by brick by brick. You are either building a culture, maintaining a culture, or changing a culture, depending what the goals of the organization are. And so the difference in size, maybe not a great analogy, but if I throw a rock into a bathtub, it makes a big splash and it makes a big deal. If I throw it into the ocean, it doesn't. Right. But
that's a great analogy.
Be careful of that, because one person literally can change the chemistry of a team. And remember, those huge organizations fall down into small departments, small different disciplines. So it's a great question. I think it matters no matter the size of the organization. And frankly, whether it's a business, whether it's for-profit, non-profit, it's an organization. It's a chemistry experiment of people.
Yeah. So in your experience, what are some of the key things that you look for when hiring? And I'm also curious to know how that has changed due to COVID, right? Because like so many things are happening virtually now. And you mentioned, with Turner having employees all over the world. So let's dive into that. How have things changed and what are people looking for?
I think that there's a constant, so let me start by saying that there's a lot of frankly bad practices in the hiring process.
Yeah.
Some of those are driven by decades of practice, and the most prominent one that comes to mind is the resume, right? And the fact that many hiring managers focus on the resume. And they will do that physically in an interview. They'll literally have the resume in front of them and say, so I see on your resume here that, and the candidate, by the way, unfortunately has been trained to rely on their resume. So in other words, one of the things that's changed, one of the things I advocate in the book is put the resume away, okay? Resumes are about things. The hiring process that I'm advocating and building your team is about people.
Yeah.
And they're two very different things. So the point is this, resume type interviewing has been around forever. Interviewing for behavioral skills and behaviors and past performance is not necessarily new, but it's still something that people have to get comfortable with. What's changed with COVID? I think this was before COVID. I think COVID accentuated it. Technology has moved into this space very much, certainly in the last 10 years. And by that specifically, I mean online assessment tools. We have an opening for fill in the blank. You have a resume. Let's send you to some antiseptic site that you have to fill out some series of questions, and that will automatically give us back an assessment, which, by the way, of course, will tell us if you're qualified or not. COVID accentuated that because of everything else online. And by the way, a lot of organizations did a lot of hiring in COVID.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't stop. But again, that technology's been around pre-COVID. And then during COVID, the whole concept of online Zoom interviews. I have a daughter-in-law who's a very, very talented attorney in New York City. In the last, let's say 3 to 4 or 5, 6 months, she was sourced, interviewed, onboarded, and hired completely virtually.
Wow.
And by the way, she's been working for, again, a couple, 3 months, technically has never met in person, and this is a large law firm. So technology is definitely the impact. COVID accentuated the Zoom part and the virtual part. I am absolutely a fan of technology, but I'm fearful that too many people use it as a push the automatic button.
Yeah.
If the computer says that you're qualified, the profile we've set up, you've fallen within that profile, then my work is done. Why would I fight, the data, so to speak?
Right. Which is interesting because I feel like technology cannot pick up on those human cues, right? Like there are just some things that a computer is unable to do. Even, taking a candidate that's nervous. Most candidates get nervous, right? You could discount one of your best hires ever just for the fact that they were a little bit nervous during the interview. And I feel like technology just doesn't pick up on that.
Well, it doesn't. That's a really good point. And let's presume, again, that there's a purist out there listening who absolutely says, look, technology is foolproof. It's chemistry, it's logic, it's metrics, it's data. Then, to your point, would you not want to reinforce what the technology has told you? Now, I agree with you. Technology is not going to show emotion. Technology does not get you to ask the questions that get you to behaviors. But it's a tool. And just in my opinion, it's a tool like all tools. It shouldn't be overused. There is a place and a time when we have to speak. Now, again, if that's virtually, that's fine. There's nothing in the book that can't be done virtually. But there's a point when the talent acquisition team needs to speak and, more importantly, listen to the candidate and listen for some specific things.
Yeah. So the title of your book, I love it. The only 4 interview questions you will ever need to find the right people every time. Given your experience, what we've gone through this past year, everything that's changed, the technology, your book is a couple of months new, right?
Yeah,
just released.
Yeah, late in 2020. That's right.
what was the tipping point for you that you were like, I need to write this book. The world needs this book.
Well, you're very kind. I hope the world needs it. So look, this model that is in the book, because again, it's pretty bold and some people say pretty presumptuous. You say, what, there's only 4 questions? And by the way, my argument would be, I honestly don't care whether you're hiring at any level in the organization, whether it's a customer-facing customer service rep, honestly, a truck driver, a warehouse person, or the CEO. Because again, go back to the premise that any one person in your organization, any new hire, can change the chemistry. And so many, many years ago, I don't want to age myself or date myself, I sort of found myself around these 4 questions, and I said, look, I'm going to put this into practice, and I'm going to track it, and I'm going to see what happens. And so I focused on utilizing this 4-question model, and I began to track, so what happens? Thousands of people later, that I was either directly involved with or using the model with our management team, we were north of 90% retention. And honestly, my goal was to get to a point where we don't leave you, you leave us. And by the way, in a really perfect world, for logistical reasons. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm moving to California.
Right.
Well, we don't have an operation in California, so we can't keep with it. But the point is, decades of practice, thousands of candidates, and more than a 90% hit rate, so to speak, a retention rate. It was a sea change in the sense of shifting control. This is a big deal for a lot of hiring managers in the actual interview process. Talent acquisition managers are still in a mode, not all, many, I'm in control. This is my turf. I already have a job. No one will say this, by the way. I already have a job. I can afford to be a jerk, but you can't, because you're a candidate and you have to literally dance on the head of a pin.
Right.
This shifts completely and says, my goal is to listen as much as possible and to get you to speak as much as possible. I actually say in the book and in practice, I'm going to turn control of our time together over to you. I want to listen to you. Now, by the way, that's very disconcerting for candidates, since one of the things in the book I talk about, they're not used to that. They're
right. Well, back to your point about the resume, one is expecting that you're just going to stick to that resume, right? Like, here's what I've turned into you to tell you that I've accomplished.
Right.
And you walk into the interview expecting that we're just going to cover this one sheet.
That's
100%.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And the questions, the 4 are all open-ended. That's not revolutionary per se. But you're absolutely right. I've done this a lot. And the candidates, when you ask them an open-ended question, say, look, I want to listen. I want to turn this over to you. Many times you will get a look and a pause, and then the candidate's first go-to, well, on my resume it says, and again, you have to find a gentle and a kind way of saying, look, you know what, you've got a great resume, I've seen it, let's put it aside. And by the way, the good news, I think, is I've lost track of the number of candidates at the end of the interview who will say, wow, that's like, I don't know if I'm going to get the job or not, but that was really like a lot of comfort for me, a lot of fun for me. That's what you want. The more I can listen to you, the more I can learn about you.
Yeah.
If I do all the talking, if I play power games, I won't say never are you going to get to the right spot, but your chances are very low.
Yeah. That's so interesting, because I think of now, me being the interviewer, I always put myself in that mindset of, you used to be on the other side of the table. So I know, what that feels like. I know that you're trying to stand out in a sea of people who are applying for the job, a sea of resumes, and walking into the room and just being able to connect with that person. Because also thinking, it's you're interviewing me just as much as I'm interviewing you. Do you even want to work with me?
Right.
And so, yeah, that's very insightful, because I always think of that as well when I sit down at the table to
The
talk
number
with
of
someone.
organizations that miss, I think, a key point. An interview is a marketing opportunity
Yes.
for your organization. If I leave, look, the book clearly says not everybody's going to get a trophy, okay?
Right,
and
right.
nor should they. But if I leave your interview, I'm going to talk to friends, family, neighbors, other people who are searching for a job. That network of job searchers, by the way, is very well connected. Would you rather I tell all those people, wow, I had a really good interview, like they were really nice and they were really professional and or would you rather I say the most common things? I never got a chance to tell my story.
Yeah.
They never asked me the right questions. She or he was a real jerk. This is a marketing opportunity, and I think too many organizations blow right by that and blow right past that.
Yeah. Well, and it can also, almost feel like a doctor's appointment where you feel like you've waited all this time and you get in and see the doctor for 5 minutes because they just blew through your time together. So we did get a question online. What inspired you to do this? So like what you're doing as far as working with people, the roles you've held in other companies leading you up to the book. How did you get here?
A couple of things. The shortest answer is I hope you see it and hear it. I literally am passionate about this because I believe it. I believe that people deserve an opportunity to present themselves. And now I'm specifically focusing on the candidate and the candidate process. The other reason, if I were brutally honest, I was thinking about this morning, if I go all the way back to the beginning of my career, and the first company and the first interview, and actually if I go through the courses of my career, there was almost no job that I interviewed for, no company that I interviewed with, that I was technically qualified for. And I remember when I was with the Turner folks, and it's a long story, I was helping them as a contractor first, and at some point they said, hey, why don't you just come here and do this because you're telling us to do it.
Yeah.
I remember that one of the people I visited with was the then president of CNN, and Tom had my resume, of course, and I had met him a little bit, but I'll never forget, he made a comment in looking at all this weird history I had, and he said, you've had a very serendipitous career. And so the point of the story is, look, I understand that it's candidates who are given the opportunity to tell their story, and organizations who have a clear profile in mind, that is the best chance for people and organizations to connect. I really believe in it, and I believe in it because of personal experience, and again, statistically, this model works.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
I know it works. So
I love it. Will you share one of the questions with us? Because I don't want you to share them all. I don't want to give away all your secrets. But what is one of the 4 questions?
Given the time, because we could go on a lot of different directions, I'll actually talk about number 4 because it's one that's some people find really weird. Now, again, this is going to be hard because it's out of context and you don't have the first 3. And
so go get the book, okay?
Yeah, this one will seem like, wow, where did that one come from? But the last of the 4 questions that I cover with people is, tell me what you do for fun. What do you do with your free time? Now, again, candidates are like, wow, I never heard that one before. It's not a game. It's not a trick, by the way. I talk a lot about there are no tricks in games to be played. But here's why it's an important number 4. Now, remember, we've covered a whole lot of ground with the other 3.
Yeah.
But think about this. The way that a person spends their free time and what they do for fun, that is one aspect of their life that they are 100% in control of, right?
Yeah.
So at the point at which I say, I'm going to take a time out, or it's the evening, I'm going to relax, it's the weekend, I'm going to relax, I'm going to make a decision about how I want to spend my time. Now, it may not be that conscious, but it really is. And so for me, I'm fascinated to know when you are 100% in control, how do you spend your fun time? What do you do for fun? And by the way, as you would expect, I've heard every possible answer that you can think of along the spectrum of that. But what's woven in all four of the questions is if I listen and I talk about becoming a student of human behavior. If I tell you that what I do for fun is, you know what, I don't really like people that much, and so what I do for fun is I kind of go into my house or my apartment and I read a bunch of books with my 32 cats and et cetera, et cetera. There's some messages in there. Now we'll skip the 32 cats, but if I'm hiring you, if our organization, if our culture is all about we do everything together and we hang out together and we have fun and we interact and we do a lot of stuff, and one of the things you say to me is, I don't really like being around people that much. It doesn't mean you're a bad person.
Yeah.
It just means that you've given me one piece of a puzzle. Again, the other questions give me more pieces. That may mean, it may not be a good cultural fit for us. Not that you're a bad person, but I have to listen during the time of these four questions, and I'm getting pieces of a puzzle. And ideally, when I'm done, I use a term, and there's a term out there called, do the words and the music match? So you can say to me, I love people and I'd be the greatest salesperson that you ever had, and then later on or sometime I hear something else that puts a piece of the puzzle that says, God bless you for what you do for fun, but it may not be the right fit that we're looking for right now.
That's interesting you say that. Speaking of COVID and quarantine, I was watching some old episodes of Undercover Boss.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was like Yankee Candle Company or something, but of course the boss was undercover, and one of the employees said, I hate people and I hate kids. And it was like, why are you here?
Right.
When you applied for the position, your job is to interact with customers on the floor. So do yourself a favor and don't even apply for that job if it's something that in your heart you don't enjoy doing.
Yeah, we won't go there because we don't have time probably, but another one of the questions specifically asks you to focus on what for you are deal breakers.
Yeah.
And I explain, a deal breaker means there are these things that I will live with in an organization as an employee. There are things I won't live with. And I make a comment in the book. Frankly, I've seen employees put up with stuff that I step back and go, I can't believe you're putting up with that.
Yeah.
And then conversely, I've seen people who leave because you didn't smile at me this morning, when I walked in. But deal breakers are critically important, because if I learn those and if I know those ahead of time, and by the way, if as a candidate, I don't mean the word force, but I force you to enunciate those, we may both realize, wow, if it's really important to you that this or this happens, that's not who we are.
Yeah.
Or by the way, it is who we are. But deal breakers, I hate train wrecks. Train wrecks hurt the organization.
Yep.
They hurt the candidate, because now you've come to work, you just left your job search, there's a train wreck, it's not going to work out, and we both lose. I have to go back into the talent pool. You have to go back out into a job search. So one of the other three, without much detail, talks about deal breakers. The more I understand those, again, this isn't about you're a good person or a bad person.
Right.
It's about your behaviors and your interests fit the profile that we've designed in an organization, or they don't. It's okay if they don't.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the small thing, because sometimes it's the big thing. But people, I understand that we all need to make money, right? We have bills coming in, but the thing that you accept the job for today could very well be the reason why someone leaves tomorrow. I mean, if you're accepting it because of a paycheck, but by the way, you're going to be dealing with kids every day. And it's, it's like the house you buy that you love, but it's an hour away. And you're like, but we love the house, an hour will be fine. Well, after you drive that hour back and forth to work for 5 or 10 years, you can't stand it, right?
Right.
So yeah, that's really interesting, of just, recognizing that now and saving both parties some work in the long run.
And it's important, and it's a cliche and it sounds too simple, but I want people that are hired to be happy. And unhappiness drives all sorts of things, and it changes the chemistry in my little work group. It may change the chemistry in the organization depending what the role is. It changes, we know this, we know scientifically, it changes my productivity, it changes my output, it changes my creativity, all of those things. So the more that we can say, look, tell me about them. And again, I've heard the full spectrum of deal breakers, but the key is, did you leave the time with the candidate and say, I now understand those deal breakers. I understand for them what's things they'll live with and things that they won't live with.
Yeah. Wow. All right. One more question. So we have the 4 questions that leaders would ask. What's a really good question that the potential candidate could ask?
It's a great point that you raised, and I think that at the right time, meaning timing is everything, and it wouldn't be the very first thing that I say as a candidate because I might the hiring manager would think that's a little presumptuous. But the point is, I think at some point you want to specifically ask the hiring manager, how could I best contribute to your team?
That's good.
Or what is it that I can bring to your team that would be the most helpful to you? Again, that's not a game. If you're sincere as a candidate, then when you're asking that, what you're asking is, here we go again. Look, I've got a resume with all this stuff on it. You've got an organization, you've got a culture that you've already built and are running. How can I best contribute to that? How can I best add to that? How can I best be an asset to that? Here we go again with the human capital part, right? Assets and liabilities. But yeah, that's one that as an interviewer, I always value, because again, presuming it's not just a check the box thing, but I value because it tells me that the person is already thinking about how would I fit in. Not, let me tell you 10 more reasons why you should hire me.
Right.
But how can I be a contributor? How can I be an asset?
Yeah. I'm right there with you. I do not like it when I ask, do you have any questions for me? And the answer is no. I always want someone to have a question for me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think the model helps because at that point you have ideally engaged this person for 40, 45 minutes. And again, the comfort level hopefully has gone up. So it seems to be a much more natural ending to the conversation. So it's another tool.
Awesome. Well, Allan DiNero, his new book, The Only 4 Interview Questions You Will Ever Need to Find the Right People Every Time. Allan, if someone wants to connect with you, get a copy of the book, where do they go?
Well, it's on Amazon.com, and if you put in the title of the book or my name, then it should pop up. The book is available, by the way, in both print and e-version.
Oh, awesome.
So people want to download it and swipe their screen, they can do that. Also, ad@newcenturypartners.com is my email. And if people connect with me that way, I can help steer them. And believe it or not, I actually enjoy engaging with people. They say, well, you won't respond to my email or you won't talk to me. I'll be happy to talk to you. I really believe in this. And it's, by the way, it's pretty simple. It's not rocket science.
It's the only 4 questions you'll ever need.
It's only 4 questions. That's it. That's it. Yep.
I love how you've taken something that seems like it's so complex, but you've really just narrowed it down to the essentials. And I think it's super, especially for the time that we're in right now with so many people looking for a job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Allan, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Awesome.
I love the studio and the surroundings. It's great. It's wonderful.
Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next time.